And I think this comes around to my major takeaway, and I'm trying not to overreact from what we saw Saturday, and I encourage Iowa fans not to overreact to what we saw Saturday. But one of my big takeaways is I don't think, and I've been kind of dismissive of this notion for many years, but I don't think we're going to see much change offensively under Kirk Ferentz until he retires. I mean, it's just not going to happen. The stubbornness of, and I don't want to attack coaching, the coaching staff here, but the stubbornness that we continue to see from Kirk, from Brian, and it starts with Kirk, because Brian is obviously calling the majority of the shots, but it doesn't matter. Kirk is not stepping in and changing anything. I mean, obviously it comes back to Kirk. He is obviously not willing to make adjustments from a play calling standpoint, because we hear every week Iowa fans complaining about play calling. Now, Saturday had much more to do with just getting beaten in the X's and O's and the Jimmies and Joes than it was necessarily just straight up game day play calling. But there's certain things that just aren't going to change as long as Kirk is here and as long as his son is the offensive coordinator. We continue to see the quarterback position be a question mark. I know everybody's complaining about the offensive line, and rightfully so. I heard somebody call for George Barnett to be fired on Twitter. The guy just got hired before the season started. He's coached in 7 games, and they're 6-1, and we're going to fire the offensive line coach. It's such a ridiculous notion, but let's remember, like it or not, I said it before the season, and I don't want to say I told you so, because I didn't. I predicted that Iowa would win the West. I would still predict that at this point. I think the pathway for Iowa is easier than Purdue, and probably narrowly easier than Minnesota, although they don't have a real tough schedule down the stretch either. But I said preseason, my concerns were quarterback and maybe offensive line. And I was a bit dismissive of the offensive line because I liked what Iowa returned in Cody Ince and Kyler Schott and certainly Tyler Linderbaum. And so I kind of figured they'll figure it out at the tackle positions. And they haven't figured it out, the tackle positions. So that's just unfortunately the reality that we're seeing. Spencer Petras has improved, I would say markedly, but his downfalls from last year are pretty much still his downfalls from this year, with the exception being his ability to get the ball down the field. His accuracy has certainly improved as well, but his escapability is zero. I know fans have been ranting about that this week. That's not changing, and especially when you don't have a line that can protect you. That weakness is going to highlight another weakness. So there's just a lot of different takeaways from the game on Saturday. I think we have to accept that this offensive line is just not going to get a ton better. Don Patterson said it on Saturday. I heard him on a radio show here in Iowa again Monday morning, and he's absolutely right. The offensive line, you can't get bigger and stronger midseason. It's just not going to happen. That's what happens in the spring and mostly in the summer. So, they can get better with their technique. They can get better with, play recognition and whatnot. But these tackles just have to get in the weight room this next summer. So you just wonder, how much can Iowa continue to win throwing the football with a quarterback who doesn't know how to escape the pocket and make plays on the run, and a pair of tackles that are just young. I'm not blaming them. It was different in 2019 when Iowa couldn't protect the quarter. It was Stanley at the time on the interior with the Paulson twins primarily. Those guys were fifth-year seniors, and I thought it was ridiculous at the time, and that certainly wasn't George Barnett coaching the offensive line. It was ridiculous. They had no other better options than the Paulson twins to anchor that offensive line. Now we've got a sophomore and a freshman. So as disappointing as it is, that's just life, but that would probably be the quarterback position and the offensive line is probably my biggest concern moving forward, Mark.
All right. Iowa Talk here every Tuesday night here at the Voice of College Football, 5:30 Eastern, 4:30, where it really matters, there in Iowa Central Time. Here with Corey Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We would encourage everyone to head on over there and please sub to Corey's channel from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And right here at the Voice of College Football, check out our Iowa channel, because Corey's done an outstanding job of supplying us with tremendous content on a regular basis there, including, of course, the post-game show each and every Saturday with Coach Don Patterson. So looking ahead, of course, no game this week. I brought up the offensive deficiencies for obvious reasons because they were front and center from game one on, and the discussion being, are they going to get better? What can be done about them? And I certainly excuse them to a certain extent. And I'm sure you heard me say this a few times, that I was giving Iowa a bit of the benefit of the doubt. I did not in any way expect this to be a prolific offense, but giving them the benefit of the doubt that they were playing to the defensive prowess, the game situation, the score. And I thought that had something to do with it. Now, here we are in a game against Purdue that has a fine defense. If you check out their numbers across the board, they have a fine defense and have played consistently all year. But still, one touchdown at home is just a pretty pathetic offensive showing. So now the prospects of this team making it through the Big Ten Western Division, I think you might agree, Corey, it's not necessarily that this team in any way should fear any one of its opponents, but it's just, what are the probabilities of being able to make it through the entire schedule? And not that this team cannot win a division championship and still lose one more game. That may be the result of all this, is that a 7-2 team in conference wins the division. But certainly, to see them go through now what is going to be Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska out of their final 5 games, certainly Northwestern and Illinois can't be an issue if this team wants to achieve its goals.
But a lot of people thought Purdue, I don't know why, but a lot of people said Purdue was one of the easier Big Ten games on the schedule because it's at home and it was against a team that, I guess Purdue was the one team. I did say this back in the spring that Purdue was kind of my dark horse team in the West that nobody was talking about. And I guess that I was right. I wish I wasn't. But Northwestern should not be, there should be no doubt in that game. Northwestern's defense is not, although they beat Rutgers the other day, right? So, you never know with Patty Fitz, but man, that should not be a game where we're sweating as Iowa people. Nebraska, I was starting to get higher on Nebraska, and then they lose to Minnesota, and I just don't know that they know how to win as well as they can play at times. Adrian Martinez making the same, dumb errors that I saw the safety that he threw for, I guess you can say. Ridiculous. But so those games are games Iowa should win. Certainly Minnesota and Wisconsin, those are the biggest ones left. But you got to win all of them if you want any chance at making a playoff. For this loss not to be one of those painful losses we look back at postseason, they need to win out. And I don't know how reasonable it is. I'll just say this. I had a conversation with Don over lunch a few weeks ago, and I told him, I said, I'm thinking Iowa has a good chance at winning out given their schedule. And he agreed. This is Coach Don, who's, again, he's a homer, but he's pretty level-headed. He thought we had a really good chance at winning out. Didn't guarantee it. And certainly we see why, because college football is a weird sport. But I still think they have a chance at winning out. I could also see them losing to Wisconsin. I could see them losing to Minnesota. And then who am I missing? Illinois was the other team. Man, I can't imagine a scenario where they lose to Illinois, to Northwestern, and to Nebraska. But if you think about that, Mark, all those games have a kind of an odd, I don't want to say rivalry storyline, but Patty Fitz has had Iowa's number. Brett Bielema, he'd love to beat his alma mater. And Nebraska's a rivalry game on the road against, with Scott Frost, who, is he going to be on the hot seat at that point? That's a possibility. So there are storylines there. You can't take any game for granted, especially in the Big Ten.